Hello, and welcome back to Knock Boom Creek. Yes, you now know I'm an evil spirit with a YouTube channel. Well, that's no reason to not have a good time. Let's be friends. You can call me Knox. There isn't that better. How about a story? Okay? Oh, I've got it. The bedroom was dark, blackness pressed against the window. David lay still, eyes closed, trying to ignore the chill seeping in from the night. He hated this time. The hour before sleep truly took hold. The air felt heavy, expectant. He shifted, pulling the duvet tighter. A faint rustling sound came from beneath the bed. Just the house settling, he told himself. Old houses groaned and sighed. It meant nothing. Except a sliver of unease worked its way into his mind. The draft seemed colder now, swirling around his ankles. David instinctively pulled his feet further up the bed. He wasn't superstitious. He scoffed at ghost stories and things that lurked in the shadows, yet here he was, heart thudding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He opened his eyes, staring into the impenetrable darkness at the foot of the bed. Logic battled with primal fear. It was ridiculous. There was nothing there. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to breathe deeply. In, out. It was just the wind. It had to be. Just the... Minutes ticked by. His heart rate slowed. The house was silent again, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. He was being foolish. There was nothing to be afraid of. Then he felt it. A feather-like touch against his right foot. He froze, every muscle in his body locking solid. It couldn't be real. He imagined it. It was the edge of the sheet brushing his skin, that was all. He lay perfectly still, breath trapped in his chest, waiting for the touch to come again. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. His heart pounded in his ears, each beat a reminder of his growing fear. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges of his mind. Was it all just a figment of his imagination? The clock on the wall seemed to mock him, its hands moving at a snail's pace. Maybe it had been his imagination. He tried to recall the events of the day, searching for any logical explanation. But nothing made sense. The feeling was too real, too vivid to be dismissed so easily. He was about to relax, to dismiss the whole thing as a trick of his nerves, when it happened again. A chill ran down his spine and his muscles tensed involuntarily. This time there was no mistaking it. The sensation was unmistakable, a cold, clammy touch that sent shivers through his entire body. A cold, clammy hand wrapped around his foot, the grip surprisingly strong. It felt as though it was pulling him into the abyss, a force he couldn't resist. He gasped. A sound choked off in his throat. Panic surged through him and he struggled to breathe, his chest tightening with fear. His eyes flew open, darting to the foot of the bed. He strained to see through the darkness, his vision blurred by the adrenaline coursing through his veins. For the briefest of moments he saw it, a shadowy figure, barely discernible in the dim light, standing at the foot of his bed, a pair of eyes gleaming in the darkness like hot coals. They seemed to pierce through him, filled with an unspoken menace. Then just as quickly, they were gone. The room was empty once more, but the terror lingered, a haunting reminder of what he had just witnessed. He thrashed wildly, trying to break free of the grip on his foot, but the creature held on with unnatural strength. The bed shook violently as he struggled against its grasp. He tried to scream, but terror choked the sound in his throat. He could feel the creature pulling him slowly, inexorably towards the edge of the bed. He kicked out with his free foot, connecting with something solid. A muffled grunt filled with an alien hunger reached his ears. In the dead of night, the room was cloaked in an oppressive darkness, the kind that seemed to swallow every flicker of light. Shadows danced menacingly on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Desperation lent him a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the silence. He could feel the cold sweat trickling down his back, his muscles tensing with every passing second. He twisted and bucked, yanking his foot with all his might. The sheets tangled around him like a vice, making every movement a struggle. His breath came in short, panicked gasps as he fought against the invisible force holding him down. For a heart-stopping moment, he thought he was stuck. The fear was paralyzing, a cold, creeping dread that threatened to overwhelm him. His mind raced, searching for a way out, but the darkness seemed to close in tighter. Then, with a sickening, sucking sound, he was free. The sudden release was almost as shocking as the initial grip. He felt a rush of relief, but it was fleeting, replaced quickly by a renewed sense of urgency. He scrambled back, scrambling up the headboard until his back hit the wall. The solid surface was a small comfort, a barrier between him and the unknown terror lurking in the shadows. His breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes fixed on the foot of the bed. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to spring into action at the slightest hint of movement. He waited, every sense on high alert, but the creature made no move to follow. The silence was deafening, a heavy blanket that pressed down on him, amplifying his fear. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the frantic beating of his own heart. Each thud was a reminder of his vulnerability, a stark contrast to the stillness of the room. He knew he couldn't stay there forever, but for now he was trapped in the grip of his own terror. As the minutes passed and nothing happened, a strange calmness settled over him. It was the calmness of resignation, of accepting the inevitable. He was trapped, alone in the dark, with whatever lurked beneath his bed. He wouldn't sleep again, not in this room, not in this house, perhaps not ever. He watched as the first hint of dawn lightened the edges of the window blinds. He couldn't stay here. He had to get out, get help. He slid cautiously off the bed, never taking his eyes off the shadowed space beneath it. The darkness seemed to stretch endlessly, a void that could swallow him whole. Every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down his spine. He backed slowly towards the bedroom door, his hand shaking as he reached for the handle. The air was thick with tension. Each breath he took felt like it could be his last. His heart pounded in his chest, echoing in the silence. He was almost there. One more step. The door seemed miles away, the distance growing with each hesitant movement. His mind raced with thoughts of what could be lurking in the shadows. He took a deep breath and glanced back at the bed. The room felt colder, the shadows darker. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, judging his every move. His blood ran cold. Peering out from below the bed, bathed in the faint light of dawn, was a single gleaming eye. It was not just any eye, it was filled with a malevolent intelligence, a knowing that chilled him to the bone. It blinked slowly, watching him. The deliberate motion was almost mocking, as if it knew the fear it instilled in him. He felt paralyzed, unable to look away. And then a voice, raspy and low, seemed to come from within his own head. It was a whisper that felt like it was crawling through his mind, leaving a trail of dread in its wake. "You forgot something," it whispered. The words echoed, bouncing off the walls of his consciousness, growing louder with each repetition. He followed the eye's gaze on the floor. His body trembled, every muscle tensed in anticipation of what he might see. His heart seized in his chest. The fear was overwhelming, a suffocating presence that threatened to consume him entirely. There, lying next to the bed, was his severed foot. The sight was grotesque, a horrifying confirmation of his worst fears. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in as his mind struggled to comprehend the nightmare before him. I hope you enjoyed my story. It was a little scary, if I do say. I just hate it when a snack gets away. Ha 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 ha! It was John's fault he lost his foot. Everyone knows that narwhals, oh, that's what those creatures are called. Anyway, narwhals only eat toes. If John had just stayed still, he wouldn't have lost the whole foot. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, I'll be watching. Let me know down below. Do you hang your feet off of the bed, or are you scared of the narwhals?